And when it comes to infidelity, what I see a lot is men cheat to stay in the relationship and women cheat to get out of it. And novelty is not a mix of different partners. This is what the myth we've been sold.
Yes, you just heard that from a former high-end sex worker, now turned certified sexologist, not a dating coach, not a red pill creator, not a manosphere commentator, a woman who was professionally paid to be in the most intimate space men allow themselves to exist in, behind closed doors.
So I saw, and then on the other side, men would come to me, these high-profile, high-achieving, successful men, and they would think that they just want to get their rocks off and just like have sex and that's all they want to do. And it ended up being so much more than that.
And what she found there was not what anyone expected. So we are gonna let her cook, because what she says is consistent every single time. And it confirms what this channel has been documenting for years. Let's go! Ain't that a man?
So I was a sex worker. And I got into that when I was trying to keep my startup afloat.
Issues or whatever, but there was something about the radical acceptance of being with a sex worker where they know they didn't have to perform and they weren't going to be judged and they could just be because it was transactional. There was like a freedom in that almost.
So you're a sexologist, right? That's one of the things. So can you let us know what that is?
So I didn't have a clue what a sexologist was or that it even existed up until about 4 years ago. But a sexologist studies the intersection of sexuality as it interacts with psychology, sociology, and philosophy. So taking an all-encompassing multidisciplinary approach to how we interact with sexuality, basically, because it's, it's cultural, it's biological, it's physiological, it's everything, and there's just so much there. It's like sex and death. It's it's like it's why we're all here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's the only way we're all here.
yeah, and it's just like we moralize sex so quickly, and people don't understand it. We fear it so much, and so I can just go unpack layers and layers and get super granular as to why that is. But
what I found the most interesting that's like really stuck with me is I always equated monogamy to good and like infidelity to bad. And there's so much nuance in between. Like I met some really great men and a lot of single men too, who just could not find that intimacy out there in the real world. And I felt for them, And in a way it was very cathartic for me as well, because it was this radical experience of honesty and vulnerability that was unmatched in the real world. These men would, tell me things and share things with me that they would never share with a spouse, with a partner, with a best friend. And in that container, there's so much freedom to explore because it's baseline transactional. So anything beyond that is just because you're opting in and you're deciding to share and you're deciding to explore. Mm-hmm. So very little of it was about the act itself, which will confuse a ton of people.
Let's establish something before we go further. Coral Osborne is not speaking from a textbook. She is not citing a study. She is not building a theory from a controlled environment. She was in the room, and the room she was in is the one place men consistently drop the performance. The credential they gave her is not a degree. It is access to the version of men that exists when nobody is watching. And what she found in that room dismantles the entire mainstream narrative about why men seek out sex workers. It was not about sex. It was about being seen.
What I found is, men would come to me thinking that they just wanted to get their rocks off, right? And what would be revealed pretty quickly was that they weren't being seen or acknowledged or witnessed for their full selves or heard at home or in their private lives. So they would come wanting the experience of the horror and then reconciling that when they see my humanity, and it would kind of be like a Madonna horror merger experience, which was interesting. And they would end up sharing things with me that they would never tell a spouse, a partner, a best friend, a conventional therapist. And I just found that fascinating. And for men in particular, so much of that is rooted in performance, right? And being strong all the time and wanting to have sex all the time and being masculine and being stoic and providing, and there was no flexibility there whatsoever. So a lot of men's wounding comes from the Madonna whore complex.
Oh yeah, let's go there.
Which is a split where men can't reconcile that women are whole. So they either, see women as pure and virtuous and sexless, or promiscuous, desirable, and unworthy of love and respect. And that typically comes from the mother wound. And what I saw also behind closed doors with men, it's, there was so much paradox, which I thought was fascinating. Like, there were men that were so deeply in love with their wives and would speak about them, but their wives weren't having sex with them, and they would try to bring it up. They would even be going to therapy, and they were just being met with rejection across the board, right? And rejection there for a man is the equivalent of women's emotions being totally rejected and minimized. So, as much as we try to reduce sex to it's just sex and get over it, it's a huge part of how we communicate. It's another language. So there's a few ways that can happen. One of them is the mother gives inconsistent love. So, she only awards, say, performance and good behavior and just isn't consistent. So then he puts her up on a pedestal. And then so women are now on a pedestal, but, a sexually free woman is seen as emotionally unsafe. And then there is shame around sex. So if your mother or parents or society shames you for being sexual, sex is bad, women that dress like that are bad, it's dirty, then those desires become repressed. So then the man grows up to believe that and repress his desires. So he'll end up with the Madonna, but then yearn for, the whore.
Now here is where it gets interesting for us specifically. She just defined the Madonna whore complex clinically, not as an insult, not as evidence that men have deep-rooted issues with women, as a diagnosis, a documented psychological pattern with a documented origin. We've covered the Dr. Anna versus Dr. Orion video.
Dr. Taraban is kind of telling on himself with this one, but he doesn't seem really aware of it. This specific kind of false dichotomy has a name within the field of psychology. It's called the Madonna whore complex.
Dr. Anna used the Madonna whore complex as a weapon. She named it and then used it to suggest Dr. Orion was psychologically unwell. Coral uses it as a map. Here is the pattern. Here is where it comes from. Here is how it shows up. And here is how we fix it. That is the difference between a psychologist who came into the conversation with a conclusion already written and a sexologist who spent years sitting across from the men the clinical literature was describing. And notice what Coral says at the end of that clip.
I would like it to not result in men having to go see sex workers for that to happen. I'd like to preempt it. And that's like why I love the work that I do, because, the more you repress or suppress your core desires, the bigger they get. And then you tend to eroticize trauma, and then they get out of control.
She would like to preempt it. She does not want men to have to go to a sex worker to reconcile the split. She wants to get there before it happens. That is not judgment. That is not shame. That is a woman who genuinely understands the wound and wants to close it before it opens. This is what patient-centered thinking looks like, not diagnosing the symptom, treating the patient.
What have you learned about men in this process?
Well, men are single cued. They're just single visual cued. So they can just see like a nice pair of tits or like, good or whatever. And that will turn them on. Women are psychologically, emotionally cued, right? We need to create a whole narrative around arousal, which is also, why I like to explain this big distinction in the male loneliness epidemic and what we're hearing in all these like dating stats now, right? What is it? Like 80% of women choose 20% of the men or whatever it is. And it's like a man will have to swipe like 100,000 times or whatever. And it's like, okay, but if you look at the incentive there, men are swiping because their genetic makeup is like procreate. They're not looking for long-term partnership when they're swiping necessarily, right? That's a nice to have. women spend on average 16 more seconds, I believe, or maybe more than that, reading a dating profile. So the motive is completely different here.
The only difference is now women have overcorrected in this matriarchal, shift that we're seeing, which is a fear response from being so suppressed for so long, right? So now we've become the men that we didn't have or that weren't safe, right? So we're like, oh, we'll provide for ourselves. We don't need you. And that's just simply a fear response. So it's a human epidemic.
Yes, and this is where you hear too that women think because they've had a one-night stand with this guy that now that you're punching above, their average there, and like that's what I should be dating, and I'm gonna hold out until I get this idea of perfection, right? So we have this whole like intimacy impasse where no one wants to stick their foot in first, right? We're in this like over preparation, waiting for perfection, and like heck, like I'm even guilty of that, like I'm still single, and it's like. Show me someone sweeter than my solitude kind of thing. That's where we're at.
Pause on what she just said. A woman has a one-night stand with a high-value man, and suddenly her standards shift. The man she was previously compatible with no longer feels like enough because she has now experienced something above her previous reference point. And that becomes the new baseline, the new minimum, the thing she is holding out for. And Coral, a certified sexologist with years of experience studying this dynamic, just admitted she is guilty of the exact same thing.
Heck, like I'm even guilty of that, like I'm still single, and it's like, show me someone sweeter than my solitude kind of thing. That's where we're at.
Show me someone sweeter than my solitude. That is where we are at. We've been documenting this pattern for years. When women consistently access men above their own sexual market value, even temporarily, it recalibrates their expectations in a direction that does not reflect their actual options. And the result is a woman who is holding out for something that may never arrive, while the men who would genuinely wife her up wait on the other side of a standard she set in a moment that was never meant to be the benchmark. Coral is not immune to this. She knows the mechanism, she studies it, she teaches it, and she still found herself sitting alone saying, show me someone sweeter than my solitude. That is not a red pill observation. That is a sexologist diagnosing herself.
Yeah. They want to be seen for all parts of them, right? Seen and not judged. And we talk about vulnerability all the time. And I think that there's confusion about what that means. Vulnerability is not just like oversharing. It's not like, oh, my mom did this and my dad left when I was 7 and then blah, 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 blah. It's saying something or expressing a need or want, which obviously I learned that showed up sexually as well, right? And knowing that could be met with abandonment, rejection, judgment, and instead being met with acceptance, or also me reciprocating and also saying something that you could judge or abandon me for or reject me for, right? Like we're all whole people, and yet we feel like we need to just over-identify with like one persona and being one thing.
And it was really interesting to see what happened if sex was already just on the table out of the gates. There's like a confidence that a man walks into the room with that is unmatched out there in the real world, where he doesn't have to lead with a persona or manipulation or coercion. It's just like, okay, we're here for this. And then anything on top of that, the act itself, was completely honest and vulnerable because there was no expectation. And I was like, this is so bizarre. It's kind of a reverse engineered way of approaching intimacy. And I found it fascinating. And I found it was very confusing to me because I felt so much safer in that container with clients than I did like dating in the real world. And I always say, I don't have a trauma from sex work. No one wants to hear that. They want a trauma story. I have that from dating, not from sex work. So
you're going about it totally backwards. Yeah. Like instead of saying what you want and giving the man a chance to be a man and step up to the plate, you're using a strategy or a tactic instead of setting a standard. standards are very different from strategies. Like, know your worth, know the relationship you want, and come at it in a place that's like aspirational and like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Like, is this of interest to you? Is this something that you want, rather than going into it from a threatening perspective.
Especially if you've
So yeah, I mean, accepting men for all parts of them, definitely. And men are chronically told that they're not enough, whereas women are told they're too much. Like, this is the messaging that we get, right?
So men and women will cosplay these other parts of themselves. Like, oh, I'm doing this for you. But like, it's just like a man will, buy a woman a flight or take her for dinner, but there'll be an expectation attached to it, right? So let's look at our blind spots in sex too, or where are we actually using sex as women to get commitment? I've certainly done that. It's like, well, if I perform enough, then like, how could he possibly say no to me, right? So, and there's ways that that's fun in a relationship, by the way. It's like you can kinkify anything. Like, yeah, you do the dishes, I'll give you a blowjob, whatever, right? That's fun. But like in terms of getting into a relationship, again, like men are using dangling the carrot of commitment and women are dangling the carrot of sexuality.
6 seconds, 1 sentence. The entire dynamic between men and women in the modern dating market, summarized by a woman who sat on both sides of the transaction professionally. Men dangling commitment, women dangling sexuality. That is a transaction. It has always been a transaction. And for most of human civilization, it was a clearly understood one. Man offers commitment and security. Woman offers sexuality and companionship. Both parties knew the terms, but the framework was dismantled without being replaced. Women gained financial independence and sexual freedom. The milk became available without the cow needing to be purchased. And men responded the way rational actors always respond when the price of something drops. They stopped paying full price. The transaction did not disappear. It just became lopsided, and a lopsided transaction always collapses. Coral was literally the alternative market, the place men went when the primary market stopped making sense. And what she found there was not men who wanted less. It was men who wanted more.
For me, it's like, no, I gate kept my pleasure. So I wasn't able to have orgasms like with anyone ever. It was like I started
real intimate
about it like
relation.
14 years old, and it's like you just went from there. And how you do one thing is how you do everything, right? So it's like if you're faking that, like then you're probably afraid to show someone all parts of you. If you're afraid to ask for what you want in the bedroom, you're afraid to ask for a raise. It's just, it literally mirrors how we do life.
Men feel like they're only here to perform and do and provide. And if you can reflect back to them what they mean to you and invite them to share deeper parts of themselves, that's not an interrogation, it's an invitation to explore, that's the best you can give them. It's not attached to outcome or expectation. It's just of wanting to know the deeper parts of them and not rejecting them for their truth and sharing their truth and rewarding them for it. That's what I want all women to know.
She was paid to be in that room, and what she found there was not what the mainstream narrative told you she would find. She did not find monsters. She did not find predators. She did not find men who could not control themselves. She found men who could not be seen anywhere else. Men who were performing strength at home and paying to put it down somewhere safe. Men who loved their wives and could not tell them the truth because they did not believe the truth would be received. Men who were chronically told they were not enough and had nowhere to put that.
People just overly ascribe meaning to things that really shouldn't have meaning, and it's never about the thing itself, which is, it's always about the thing beneath the thing, beneath the thing, beneath the thing that is abandonment or rejection.
Alison Armstrong documented it. Esther Perel named the cultural mechanism. The World Happiness Report confirmed the data, and Coral Osborne sat across from it in real time for years. The answer is always the same. Men do not want to be worshipped. They do not want to be celebrated. They want to be seen, acknowledged, received for all of it, not just the parts that are easy to love. And the woman who confirmed that most clearly is a former high-end sex worker who went back to school to figure out why. That is not the manosphere. That is not red pill content. That is a woman who was in the room. Listen to all, follow none.
Manosphere, we working. Protect yourself at all times. This video has officially been highlighted.